Oh, I didn't even realize I was shut up. But what I was saying was, for my purposes, shockingly uncontroversial anyway, which is that smoking is bad for you.
Yes, so true. So let me say hello, and this is our very first book club. Hopefully, to be followed by, well, I know to be followed by several more. But today we have um, Al Lewis and Vic Khanna, who are going to talk about their book that hopefully most of you have read. If you haven't read it, it's not the end of the world because you can still read it after this is over with probably with a lot more intel. Um, so if you have questions, if you read the book and you have questions, please let us know, and I will gladly unmute your microphone. If you're not good with that, then you can. And don't forget to turn off your phone. You can certainly type questions into the box, and we'll get to them. So there you have it. Hopefully, you're seeing our pictures. And Kelly, do you want to introduce Al and Vic? Kelly,
Sure.
we're planning on it.
One second.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Should have anticipated that. Yep, can hear you.
Oh. Oh. Okay, can you hear me now?
Yep. Yeah,
Yeah.
I apologize for that because we should have planned that ahead of time. Although this is
I think the line "Can you hear me now" is one of the most spoken sentences in the English language these days.
right. It is.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, you're gonna have to find
Yes.
something original, Kelly. Like
Yeah, you know what's happening, Michael, is I'm pulling up their bios to read them. My computer's telling me, shut that, you're doing too many things at once. And I
ah,
can't let you talk and read that at the same time or I will shut down.
We
okay,
we can introduce ourselves if you like.
excellent. You know best
That
anyway.
would help.
Um,
Awesome. Well, then take it away, Al.
oh, all right. Well, a lot of people in this field compare me to Dean Vernon C. Wormer, but Vic and I really feel like we're not anti wellness. We're anti-wellness done badly. And if you actually read the entire book, you'll see that in fact we do propose that if you do wellness for your employees instead of to them, that you will have a much more successful program, a much more successful experience. You may not save any money, but frankly, you're not going to save any money doing wellness to your employees either. I don't think, given that we don't really have a humongous amount of time, and I imagine people want to ask questions, our bios are in the book, so I'm just going to
Okay.
stop there. And Vic, did you want to say a couple things?
Yeah, I'll just add that I'm completely with Al in terms of wanting people to do wellness for the right reasons, and also that people should appreciate that wellness should not just be a duplication of what the medical industry has to offer. That is overlaying a medical model on the workplace and trying to make it into something that it isn't. And the medical model, as we should all realize by now, is costly and inefficient and in a lot of ways harmful to people. And so when wellness is done in the clinical way that it is done as it's pushed out by the Affordable Care Act, we believe very strongly that it's not only harmful, but it's wasteful. And so, as Al says, we are fully aligned with doing wellness. Just don't tell us that you're going to save money or improve lives in the short term.
All right. So I had asked one of you to read a brief sort of representative excerpt from the book. Um, who's going to do that?
Did you ask me? Well, we can tell stories. I mean, the stories are all the same, and we don't mind naming names. And I see there are a lot of names on this call, but I don't know who they're affiliated with. So if I use your name, the name of your organization, feel free to defend it. Go ahead, make our day. In
Hmm.
fact, please, please sue us. Mercer, Milliman, Cigna, Aetna, sue us, please. Okay, we could really use the PR. And if you're suing us, you're going to have to sue Euclid and Descartes and all those people too, because you're essentially going against arithmetic. you cannot reduce the number by more than 100%. Okay, that includes you, WellSteps, as well as you, Aetna, and you, U.S. Corporate Wellness, and you, several other people. And then Vic, I'll turn it over to you. But there's one other bugaboo is on your health risk assessments. If people actually seriously did all the things that you asked them to do, your costs would go through the roof. You are not supposed to be sending people to the doctor every year. The literature is clear on that. You're not supposed to be screening people every year. You're not supposed to be getting, like, take the state of Nebraska, which next to Penn State's probably the most notorious wellness program. They waived all age-based screening requirements and told people to go out and get their colon screened and put this beautiful model in their literature, in their flyer that they sent out. So like, oh, if I can be beautiful if I go get my colon screened. So they ended up getting a ton of people's colon screens, and they found 514 cases of cancer where they saved people's lives, or so they said. In fact, when somebody pointed out, and I don't know how they managed to get through the entire COOP award committee without anybody noticing that the rate of colon cancer is not 10%. No one from Mercer noticed, no one from Milliman noticed, no one from Truman noticed. I did a simple piece of arithmetic, pointed it out to the Omaha World Herald, and the Omaha World Herald got Health Fitness Corporation to admit they were lying. So you know what the COOP Award Committee did? Because they were lying and they falsified their data, the COOP Award Committee took their award away from them. Not! No! Falsifying data is part of doing business in wellness. The COOP Award Committee said, we don't care if you falsified your data, you get to keep your award. Okay, if you don't stop me soon, Dick, why don't you take it from here?
Yeah, and I think my favorite part of laying out the case against the conventional approach to wellness is actually right in the very beginning of the book, where we talk in the introduction about what Penn State did to its faculty and staff last summer. And for those of you who haven't read it yet, or maybe you haven't heard the Penn State story, the Penn State Human Resources leadership, with the fine guidance of Highmark Blue Cross Blue Shield and Mr. Wellness himself, Professor Ron Getzel, concocted a wellness program that was going to fine faculty and staff. And of course, they unveiled this over the summer. A lot of the faculty and staff were on sabbatical in a way, and told people that if they didn't answer a highly intrusive HRA, go to the doctor for a series of preventive care visits, submit to biometrics, that they were going to be penalized $100 per month. And not only that, but the Penn State leadership team apparently was perfectly happy with the vendor pushing out a health risk appraisal that asked female participants in the program to identify their reproductive plans in the coming year. So we have a program that is not only not based on sound science, that is coercive and intrusive, but is arguably also violating the law by asking women to talk about their reproductive plans without asking any of the male members of the faculty whether they plan to become fathers. And to us, this was just a poster child for what's gone wrong with the wellness movement. And of course, you also have then at Penn State bragging about the new desserts that are coming out of their creamery and bakery program at the same time they're telling everybody to go to the doctor. And that to us is a nice encapsulation of what's wrong with the current approach to wellness. Wellness vendors are ill-equipped for the most part to go in and talk to employers about making change in the culture that opens doors to wellness but does not forcefully shove employees through them. And that really is what went wrong at Penn State and has gone wrong in so many other wellness environments. And I'm glad Al brought up Aetna and Cigna and United, because in fact,
actually, United escaped our dragnet. It was Aetna and Cigna in this book.
Well, I'll add United because thanks to my wife's employment with large corporations, I've actually had the chance to participate in the wellness program of all three of those companies over the last 10 years and found each one of them to be utterly and completely useless. But yet that's where the industry has gone, and now the health plans are all getting into wellness, not because there's anything particularly valuable that they're going to add to the story, but they know there's a wellness mania, a wellness bubble, and everybody's buying a wellness program. So as is true of most things in the health plan industry, just because it's not useful doesn't mean it's not profitable.
Yes, in fact, I just had a conversation yesterday with an organization that knows full well that wellness doesn't save any money, but what we're going to do is we're going to sell it to it's a plan, and we're going to sell it to their employers, because employers have not somehow figured out that this is not to save money. And I think we know why. It's because when they have these brokers, the smaller employers have brokers who make money every time they sell a wellness program, and the larger employers have consulting firms that make money every time they do an RFP. And in some cases, and we named some names, and I'm not going to name any names on this webinar, but rhyming with Mercer, for example, they are perfectly willing to, if there's a vendor that they like, they're perfectly willing to validate mathematically impossible outcomes on behalf of that vendor, and that way they get paid to do the RFP, and then they get paid to evaluate the outcomes.
Let's see how this goes. I'm gonna try to unmute everyone so that.
Trust me, I'm very unmuted. I'm one of the most people on earth.
Well, yeah. I'm hoping that this will. Please. Oh, yikes!
Lots of background noise on my end.
Okay, well, please mute yourselves.
Well, you guys are unmuting. I can hear something. It sounds like. It sounds like Alvin and the Chipmunk. Oh no, it sounds like R2D2.
I know. So I'm gonna. Shoot. Okay, that's pretty awful. No, that didn't work, did it? So we'll figure this
I think we're fine now.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Maybe if people could just raise their hand.
Yeah, if you raise your hand, we will totally
Go
unmute
raise
you,
your hand.
Yeah, some of you may very well not want to be unmuted, but I really would like this to be a conversation. We have been getting some questions, but I really want this to be a conversation, much more than a regular presentation type.
Well, Michael, why don't we start by having you toss out one of the questions you've got?
Okay, Kelly, you and I.
And you had said you'd gotten a couple of good ones before the session. There's not good as well.
Yep. So, so one of the questions is sort of right along the lines of what you just said. You've been pretty incriminating of the major groups, Aetna and Mercer and Cigna and Highmark, some of the biggest insurance companies in the country. Has anybody tried to fight back or refute your claims?
No, they don't. Nuts. I mean, the last essay we wrote for the healthcare blog, which is now the epilogue to the print version of the book, is about Aetna's new obesity and weight loss program, in which they are pushing out two highly controversial drugs to their obese membership. And in fact, in JAMA last week, two prominent physician researchers said these drugs are deeply problematic and that the FDA should actually reconsider approval. And even though we came right out and said that Aetna was making a grievous mistake and that there were a lot of things untold, such as what's the financial relationship between Aetna and the drug manufacturers, whom financial analysts, if I remember correctly, Al, characterize as flailing in the marketplace, Aetna has done nothing. And in fact, Aetna's CEO got great press this week for being at a major healthcare conference and talking about how Aetna plans to be disruptive in the new healthcare environment. Well, I think the first thing they ought to disrupt is this absurd weight loss program.
And let's keep in mind that this weight loss program, they don't even think it saves money. They're not. If they thought it saved money, they would do it for their own fully insured members. Instead, this is a privilege that they reserve for their self-insured members, where they've got some brokers who will make some commission in selling it, because there is no, they're showing by their own actions that there is no ROI in pitching flailing obesity drugs to their own members. So Aetna's crossed two lines here. Number one, as far as we know, this is the first time that any wellness or disease management plan has actually recommended name brand drugs, as opposed to saying, talk to your doctor about, about your drug regimen. Actually recommending name brand drugs. And number two, they're recommending them to people who are not sick, they're just obese. And number three, they're outreaching. It's not like these people are calling them and saying, hey, Aetna, can you recommend some flailing drugs for our obesity? No, Aetna is outreaching them, saying, have we got the flailing drugs for you? So, and by the way, speaking of other people who have not fought back, when we posted, we have another story which is about Staywell and Mercer and their massive claims of savings to British Petroleum that were 100 times the savings that Staywell itself says is possible. We wrote to Staywell and Mercer and said, please come on the healthcare blog and defend yourselves, and they didn't do it.
It is standard practice for the industry to ignore us. With the exception of a few people who will come after Al and I on LinkedIn and other places, it is standard practice for the industry to ignore us. I think what they're hoping is that we're just going to go away. And the problem with that is that Al and I believe so deeply in wellness that we're two of the healthiest guys around. So we're not actually going anywhere anytime soon.
And also, let's be perfectly honest, that 10% of the market wants to hear an honest answer, and that becomes our marketplace, right. And they pay us. And you might say that's only 10% of the market, but Vic and I represent 1% of the consultants. So we have a huge market share. So it's not like we're doing this out of charity. I mean, we make some money on it. The other thing is, another reason people don't come after us is what happened last week when somebody tried to come after us. An outfit named Shape Up said, oh, well, there's a Harvard study in 2010 that disagrees with what they said, so, you have to look at it both ways, and they tried to punch holes in our numbers. Well, guess what? Number one, they got all their data wrong, but number two, it turns out Shape Up itself wouldn't recognize an outcome if it fell over it. They also did a program for Highmark where they announced that they got 0.86% of people in Highmark to go from one weight category down to the next, not including dropouts, not including non-participants, and not including people who gained the weight back. So essentially they made a big announcement that they did nothing. And we brought that to people's attention.
Well, and now remember, even more importantly, the way they announced it on their website was that 163 people lost weight during their effort. But as you pointed out, they didn't bother to do the division. And that if you take 163 and divide it into 19,000 employees, that's how you get that 0.86 number.
Right.
So they
actually, Vic, one, just because, we have to be very careful about our own data here since we are criticizing other people's. Let's just be fair to Shape Up. And what they did was very amusing, but they did not say 163 people lost weight. They said 163 people lost enough weight to go from obese to overweight, overweight to healthy weight. Right. Even so.
Right.
We have a participant question from Jean, I hope I'm pronouncing it right. She wants to know, what about disease management, and why didn't that work, and how does it differ from the wellness phenomenon?
Actually, Vic, why don't I do this one? Because actually, for better or for worse, if you Google on the phrase invented disease management, you actually get me. So, why doesn't disease management work? Disease management does kind of work. I mean, you should be able to break even on it. Because you're working with people who actually have something seriously wrong with them. So there is something that can be avoided. You're not going out and finding people and saying, run out and get medical tests that you don't need. Now, having said that, it's not that easy to save money in disease management because well, number one, a lot of times the people who are about to have the heart attacks you don't know about. You know about the people who just had the heart attacks. So sometimes it's a kind of a whack-a-mole situation. And number two, a lot of times in disease management, it doesn't matter what you tell people and how well-intentioned the people are. It's just really, really, you have one of these conditions like congestive heart failure. It's just very hard to manage.
Yeah, and to add to that, I think it's important to note that in the Pepsi data that was recently published by RAND researchers in Health Affairs, that was the one place that they found Pepsi could make a difference and get an ROI for its efforts was in disease management. Because disease management allows you to go after people who are already ill and resource users and optimize those care patterns. With generally healthy adults, there's no care pattern to optimize. And that's why you can't make money on wellness, because then you're going to, by definition, drive costs up by telling people who are generally healthy and don't need medical care to go get medical care.
All right.
Oh, my turn, Kelly.
Go ahead.
I'm wondering, how did you guys get to the place where you really are, or seem to be carving out a space for yourself, kind of as the industry watchdogs? Where did you guys, I guess, how did you get to this?
You want to go first?
Yeah, because I, as you know, Michael, because I think we did this with a previous book, maybe I had written 2 books in this space. One with our mutual colleague Tom Emmerich, called Cracking Health Costs, and I think actually it was the one before that, Vic, that you read and reviewed, called Why Nobody Believes in Numbers, which was if this is a sort of a pop smackdown of wellness arithmetic, that was a expose of disease management and wellness arithmetic. Well, and Vic reviewed it and wanted me to go meet with him in Baltimore. And normally, it's summertime. I'm in Martha's Vineyard. I don't go anywhere, But I'm thinking I don't really have a lot of friends, So if somebody in this field wants to be my friend, I'll go meet him. And then Vic, you want to take it from there?
Sure, and I actually came to this after spending almost my entire career working on managed care issues. I was a regulator in the state of Maryland. I spent about 15 years in my own consulting business working on managed care. And about 6 or 7 years ago, I came to the conclusion that even after I had written a book on managed care, which the Washington Post called the best book of its kind in 1998, I said managed care doesn't work. And I said, so maybe let me morph my consulting into wellness. Maybe there's going to be an opportunity here for the wellness industry to actually make its chops in making population health better. But it took me only about a quarter of the time that I'd spent in managed care consulting to realize that wellness, as it's done by vendors in the marketplace and by big businesses, really is an intellectually fraudulent operation. So I read Al's book. And I was anxious to now build a consulting practice taking the wellness industry on, and realized that Al and I made ideal partners. And so I managed to convince him to spend a day in the B concourse at BWI Airport, where we hashed out areas of agreement and things that we might write and do together. And the wellness industry is such a rich trove of material that it's literally kept us busy since August of 2012, and we expect it'll keep us busy for some time to come.
I can't tell you how many people write to us and say, you won't believe what this vendor just said, you won't believe what this vendor just said, and we simply there aren't enough hours in a day to put down all the wacky things that vendors say they achieve in this field. But now, Vic and I actually, we met in August 2012. It wasn't long after that before we had our first big hit, which was we got we were actually the first folks. It was January of 2013, Vic, I think, to say the emperor doesn't have any clothes. It was Health Affairs,
right?
And it was, I think it was time to end get well quick schemes or something like that.
Right.
It was the #1 Health Affairs blog in January. And it led to a whole bunch of people writing a whole bunch more stuff, and we did the Wall Street Journal and Harvard Business Review, a few other things, and it just kind of went from there.
Okay. Me now? I have one from Bill McPack.
Hey, Bill. I think you might be muted, but so I know you're
Yeah.
saying
If,
that.
if you want to be unmuted, Bill, just raise your hand and we'll do that for you. And here's the question he typed in. So if it comes down to money, how do we, as worksite wellness practitioner community, push the belief factor higher than 10% and best move forward?
Vic, you want to take that one first?
Well, from my perspective, I think there's a certain amount of atonement that needs to be done. And I think that credible wellness vendors should be able to go to employers and say, listen, for the past several years, you've been sold a bill of goods about what's going to actually make your people happier, more productive, and make them feel better about the place that they work. And that any rational approach to wellness has to be built around having happier, more satisfied employees. And I don't think that that has anything to do with HRAs, biometrics, and medical exams. I think it has to do with things like, does your workplace have a policy on exercise during the workday? And not just do you empower people to take time off, but do your managers know that they cannot use the time that someone takes off for exercise against that person at review time? You know, I actually had that brought up to me by a mid-level manager at a large device manufacturer for which Al and I wrote a wellness strategic plan. And he said, I want to be sure that the senior executive I report to is not going to hammer me at review time, that I take advantage of the company's exercise policy and I work out on my lunch hour. So those are the kinds of things that employers need to do. It's not credible for an employer to send employees to the doctor and then when the employees come back to work, they can walk into the company commissary and get a 69-cent 24-ounce Coca-Cola. The analogy I use is raising a child. I have a 10-year-old boy who's a very avid athlete and has incredible athletic aspirations. I don't make him a happier, healthier kid by taking him to the pediatrician when he doesn't need to go. I make him a happier, healthier kid by connecting with him in the space he lives in and teaching him about exercise and nutrition and limiting his electronic time, and not only just talking those things, but he sees me do those things. And employers need to recognize that leadership has to be a role model in this space, not just a mouthpiece.
And I would add to that the one of the things you have to do is pay for yourself. So you have to, if you're going to have a wellness program, you have to show some financial benefit. You can't say, oh well, there is no ROI. I think the one place there is a benefit that no one is really looking is in recruitment and retention. In that if you have a workplace that is known for having the type of policies that Vic is describing, you will recruit and retain exactly the type of folks that you want, that you're aiming for. And you should, you don't have to recruit and retain. It costs a lot of money to recruit and retain people.
Sure.
You don't have to do that a lot to pay for the type of programs Vic is talking about.
Bill,
I think one of the things that is really important for people to understand in terms of the limits of what vendors can do is that a well-done wellness policy has to cut across the silos within the organization. Because the way Al and I describe wellness in our strategic plans is it has to be understood and embraced by finance, by legal, by operations, by contracting and purchasing. That's not what vendors do. Vendors are brought in through HR and are told, well, you're going to implement the program through HR. Well, HR doesn't have authority over all these other areas. All of those people have to be brought to the table so that the wellness philosophy or the wellness culture that results is something that the entire organization is aware of and has a role in.
Yeah, and let me just add one thing. I know you want to go to the next question. Let me just add one thing, which is a conversation I had where we were talking wellness at a company you would have heard of, and then we went to the cafeteria, and there was, the usual assortment of if you pardon the expression, I hope I'm allowed to use this word, state lines, crap in the cafeteria. And I said to the HR VP, I said, one thing you might want to do for wellness is subsidize the healthier offerings, let the other offerings go on. Hello?
You're still there.
Hello?
Okay.
You're there,
Okay.
Al.
You were
All right.
overly
Yeah, remarkably, I am actually done talking about this question.
Okay. Bill, I did unmute you if you'd like to, ask a follow-up question or whatever. Hey, we lost Kelly.
Oh, we lost Al.
I'm trying to
Oh,
get
you're
back.
right.
Can
We
you
did
hear
lose
me?
Al. Sorry.
Yeah, we hear you, Al. Can't see you.
All right. Yeah, let me see if I can get back here. Yep.
There you
There
are.
he is.
I can't see you, but that's not a problem.
Ah. Okay. Well, Bill, are you there? Did you want to ask a follow-up question since you are a brave and powerful Oz? I'll take that as a no. Let's see. I guess Kelly, go ahead with another question.
Okay. Krishna has a question. Hi, Krishna. First of all, she loves the book. Second, can you comment on a statement in the book from the Slate research where you state going to the doctor when you're not sick does more harm than good?
Yeah, this has actually been shown many times, and the Slate one was a lay summary of much of the work that's been done. And Vic, I think you have some familiarity with some Cochrane work.
Right.
And there is also the Journal of the American Medical Association, but essentially they did massive amounts of studies, and they found if there's nothing wrong with you, you are actually more likely to be overdiagnosed and possibly overtreated than you are to get a benefit. Now, having said that, it's not a huge difference. So it's not like if you go to the doctor, you're going to, kill yourself or something. Just on balance, if you do not feel you are sick, you should not be and you don't have a chronic disease, you will not benefit net from going to the doctor.
And I think this really gets to philosophically, what do you believe is the genesis of health? And I think that we have been vastly oversold by the medical care industry over the past 40 or 50 years that good health begins in the clinic. And I can't think of a dumber idea, because I think that more often than not, that's where good health and common sense go to disappear, is the clinic. And I think that when people are told that health begins in the clinic and that you find health by going and engaging with it.
Hey, honey squiz, I'm on a webinar.
Very, very inefficient and costly medical care system, you're missing the point about the fact that almost all the studies done of what are the characteristics of healthy populations, the characteristics of healthy populations today are the same thing that your mother told you 40 years ago. Eat your vegetables, don't smoke, go outside and play, and be kind to yourself. It was true when I was a kid, it's true today. Good health doesn't begin by going to visit the doctor.
Kelly?
Okay. Again, Krishna wants to know if you think we'll ever move away from the ROI obsession.
Oh, Al, you got to take that.
Oh, just when you remember the slogan for Jaws 2, which was just when you thought it was safe to go back in the water. We keep thinking that if one more person claims an ROI that doesn't exist, and then we go on the healthcare blog or where have you and say, this person is obviously making up these numbers, we name names, we say it, they're competitors, get that information and send it out, that somebody sometime will say, you know something, maybe we should not claim ROIs that don't exist. But that has not happened yet.
And I guess I have a question for the industry and its obsession with ROI. There's so many things that businesses do for which they don't try to measure an ROI. You know, they supply computers to their people. They buy them better quality paper. They buy them nicer desks. CFOs don't try and measure an ROI of the new computers or the desks. It's a cost of doing business. And if you're going to really do wellness the way we're talking about, give your people time for activity during the day, subsidize it so that they have access to a facility on-site or off-site, put healthier food in the cafeteria and reduce the price of the healthier food, then that to me is not an ROI discussion. That is a cost of doing business discussion, and it goes right back to what Al said about this helps you with recruitment and retention because people are going to like working at your workplace.
Yeah, I wonder if that isn't maybe kind of a circumstance that relates to sort of the wellness being still kind of new in the overall scheme of things, and that it isn't considered a part of your business services, that you can pull it out and say, okay, prove this. If you can't prove it, it's gone. And you wouldn't do that, as you say, you wouldn't do that with computers.
Well,
Exactly.
people are moving from wellness to well-being, which I think is a huge start, where they're looking more broadly at, how do their employees feel about their workplace. I personally, I think, Vic, you agree as well, feel that's an intermediate step, and where they really want to get to is to morale, because ultimately we've got this line in the book, if you're a general leading an army, do you want troops with low cholesterol or troops with high morale?
That's probably a good
Right.
point.
There was a great article, I just posted it to my blog the other day, about the way that employees are treated at Amazon. Warehouse workers at Amazon are monitored constantly with video surveillance. They are told that if they are 100% productive, that's just your job. That's what you're expected to do. That to me is not a environment that uplifts morale and makes people feel good about what they're doing and where they're working. And I don't know. I searched long and hard for information about whether Amazon has a wellness program. I'm sure they do, and I'm sure that the irony of the amount of pressure they put on their employees and how they stress them is completely lost on them when they then tell these people they also have to participate in a wellness program. But you never see anything about that in the mainstream media. Everybody wants to criticize Walmart, but in fact, Amazon, which is this media and stock market darling, I don't think they're doing such a good job of the way they're treating their warehouse workers.
And by the way, they're not particularly profitable, to put it mildly. Probably a coincidence.
Kelly?
Okay. Emily wants to know kind of what you were just talking about. Have you seen data on recruiting and retainment? And she's been looking for reliable stats on that.
This is the irony of wellness. They have all sorts of phony data on all sorts of things that simply do not exist, and yet they've created phony data. But the one place where they could possibly be having a sizable impact, nobody has bothered to track, and yet every major employer does exit interviews and can tell you what the average tenure is of their employees and that kind of thing, but nobody's done it. Now the other thing they don't track is wellness sensitive medical events. So
Right.
They say they save all this money in wellness, but no one ever, well, you're telling me you've avoided heart attacks, but you don't know how many heart attacks you have. So that's a little off track, but the point is there are two places they should be measuring, one of which is the one you asked about, Emily, and yet we have not been able to find somebody who does.
Sounds like a dissertation project to me. Can you talk about sort of the connection between wellness and managed care? Certainly managed care is, yeah.
So managed care, as everybody knows, is something that Americans love to hate. People hate their health plans. They hate the concept of managed care. And managed care really got its start in the mid-1980s. And if you go and read a book by Peter Kongsvet and Peter Fox, which is the authoritative history of managed care, you will find that corporate wellness programs originated at the same time as managed care plans. And they arose more or less in parallel starting in the mid-1980s. And they are both basically designed as administrative tools to control the behavior of employees. So there's a certain irony here. You have the growth of medical care coverage as an employee benefit, and employers over the 80s and 90s had an interesting dynamic going on. They were making coverage ever more luxurious and covering more and more things, which was making coverage more expensive, and then they were turning to the managed care industry and workplace wellness to tamp down the spending that they themselves were fueling. And so you have this sort of nonsensical dynamic of workplace wellness really being just another set of administrative tools. And managed care, since I actually wrote a book about this, I'm going to define it. Managed care is any administrative or financial tool that seeks to control the healthcare decision-making of a person or a clinician. So wellness in its modern and conventional orientation is by definition managed care, because you're saying to employees, we are going to incentivize/fine you if you do or don't get a medical exam, answer these ridiculous questions on an HRA, which, by the way, I'm also a clinician. An HRA is not the same thing as a history and physical done by a human being, because the HRA knows you as an IP address, whereas the clinician actually knows you as a real person. And then go and get preventive medical care that you don't need. That is, by definition, managed care. And so what the workplace wellness industry has done is engage in a very creative and clever subterfuge. They basically have taken the medical model, overlaid it on the workplace, decided to call it something else, but all it is the same managed care nonsense delivered to people through a different mechanism. So managed care and wellness really are part of the same bundle. And it's been very disappointing to me to see the number of big business players just buy into this and not really understand that they're doing things that are diametrically opposed. On the one, now they're shifting, but what they did was diametrically opposed. They were working across purposes. Coverage is more luxurious and more costly, so we'll make people do all these other things to hold coverage costs down. It made no sense. And now you see what really holds coverage costs down, as our friends from Safeway helped teach us, as we outline in the book. You go before Congress and tell people it was your wellness program that held your costs down. It's a complete lie. What held your wellness costs down was the fact that you put more of the financial burden of paying for care on the backs of your employees. And in fact, that's a key part of holding healthcare costs down, is making people pay for a greater share of the care that they get, because it makes people more cost sensitive. So when you see data, the last two papers published in Health Affairs on spending trends and healthcare costs, Sleeping Giant in the New England Journal of Medicine about a month ago, both talk about the restructuring of benefits as a major player and the recession. They don't even use the word wellness when they talk about cost containment.
Interesting. Well, again, let me remind you that if you want to speak up, we would love for you to do that. So it's cool to type in your questions, but it's also really nice to hear your voice. So please do raise your hand if you'd like to be unmuted. Kelly, can you speak for the great unmuted masses, or great muted masses?
Yes, Bill McPeck has a lot to say or type. And Bill, if you just click unmute, you're muted on your end. So if you do want to speak, you just click unmute. We'll be able to hear you. And in the meantime, I will regale everyone with your commentary. Bill says, employers see desks and paper as costs of doing business. The field has not done a good job of making the wellness and morale connection. Shame on us.
I think that's accurate, because they've tried to say that it's something that it's not, right. Which is something that can get this, this 3.27 to 1 ROI, which is the number that you hear bandied about constantly by an author, Kate Baker, who is actually a very fine researcher. But this was not possibly the best research in the country, but this was not research. This was simply taking a bunch of junk articles from junk journals and summarizing them, and then walking away, except to come back 3 years later and say, by the way, I didn't mean it. So the entire industry uses that as an ROI, which was a complete distraction, and has therefore lost credibility to then go back and say, oh, by the way, all that ROI stuff we were talking about, well, it's not there. We really want to justify wellness by doing something else. If they started from the get-go, it's a little like the NFL with the head injuries. If when they found out about this stuff 20 years ago, they had just said to the players, you know, if you keep playing, we just learned you're going to get head injuries. If the players want to keep playing, that's up to them at that point. If the NFL wants to say, oh, we have all this data that says you don't get head injuries, then it's the NFL's fault. And likewise, the wellness industry is like the NFL. They were making up data when they should have come clean a long time ago and had it become part of the workplace instead of trying to justify it dollar for dollar.
All right, and Bill also commented that there actually has been some recent surveys speaking to the recruitment and retention effects. So, and Bill, if you want to send, oh, Bill, can you speak? I see you're unmuted.
Yeah, I'm trying to jump in.
Jump.
Oh, here I am. Okay.
Yay!
Hey. Hey, what an honor to talk to this august body all at once. Oh, wow. So many places to go here. We could have some fun. I guess two things. One is a general comment in that I think we need to do, as a field, a much better job differentiating and defining what the hell wellness is and how we do it. And until we do that, we're just, you know what, in the wind. Secondly, I think, I'm curious for the two of you, if you see a difference in health, working on health status improvement versus working on wellness.
Yeah, well, first of all, Bill, nice to actually hear your voice low these many years. Until today, I think you were my best friend who I'd never actually talked to live, never actually heard you again.
Well, I need to call and say, meet me at BWI, I guess.
That works once, Bill. So I would say that you know, it's health status, but I think so health status is far more important than wellness, and when, you know, because it's a much more global thing. It also includes, are you being overtreated, as well as are you avoiding some prevention? And I think where the industry is going to go, and you know, and Vic and I have actually talked about, you know, doing this as a company ourselves, is the entire industry. Literally, there are 1,000 vendors there, we think. We don't know how many vendors there are. No one knows. We know that 7 vendors have the same name, okay? You know an industry has too many vendors when 7 of them have the same name. You can Google on Empower Wellness, and you'll get 7 answers. You've got 1,000 vendors saying people are, you know, undertreated and underprevented, and we've got to do more prevention, da-da-da. You've got nobody saying what the actual literature says, which is, you know, Americans actually suffer more from too much treatment than too little treatment. So what can we do to help educate people that their, you know, their health status, their health can be optimized by making sure they don't get sucked into the treatment trap as well? So I think what you're talking about is where the industry is going to go in the broadest sense.
Yeah, and Bill, I also, it's so nice to meet you. I haven't exchanged messages with you for as long as you have with Al, but it's really nice to hear your voice. And I think the characterization of encouraging employers to think about the health status of their employees is powerful, because as Al says, not only does it include that clinical component of right-sizing their medical treatment, but then you also can have a credible conversation with the employer about what that work environment is like. You know, do they have vending machines for their assembly team in their cafeteria or out on the factory floor that are stocked top to bottom with sugar-sweetened drinks, and the vendor has put little smiley faces on the Pop-Tarts and the animal crackers to designate those as healthy as compared to the Slim Jims that are in the vending machine. To talk about things like that, and talk about the fact that people need to have appropriate amount of time to take breaks during the day. How do you get healthy things out to the employees where they work instead of them having to take time to come in to get healthier products? For one employer that I did a strategic plan for a couple of years ago, they happen to run factories that are linear. So they're these long buildings, and they have parts carts that circulate to the people periodically during the day to take parts to the assembly workers. And I said, take one of those carts and turn it into a rolling healthy food cart. Put bottles of water on it, packaged nuts, fresh fruit, whole grain snacks. It moves at like 1 mile an hour through the factory. I said, circulate that thing through the factory and tell every employee, you take anything off that cart you want. It's free. It's on us. That to me starts to say to your employees, we care about how you feel during the day. As opposed to, hey, did you get your medical exam yet?
Right, and let me go back to one of my favorite examples of what not to do, which is the Nebraska program. And I love this example both because they lied about it and admitted lying, and because they won a Coop Award. So this is a program that the Coop Award Committee, featuring some of our favorite foils here, Ron Getzel and Mercer Milliman, thinks is a great program. Well, they did what we call hyperdiagnosis, which is the exact opposite of improving health status, where they were bragging about how many sick people they found. Literally, they were saying that 40% of people were sick, but then if you looked at their actual report, they didn't do anything about it. The risk factors, the drugs didn't go up and the risk factors didn't go down. So now you've got people who really probably are healthy going around thinking they're sick. How does that help? I mean, they're told their health status is worse than it is, and they're saying this increases productivity. Well, maybe it's just me, but my productivity doesn't go up if somebody tells me that I have a disease that I don't have.
I totally agree with that.
So much work we have to do.
And Bill, it's great to have you here on the front lines with us, and we would feel like Mel Gibson charging at Gallipoli if it weren't for guys like you and Mitch, Bob Merberg, John, and a few other people.
Thank you, Al.
Hey, Bill, just so you know, I will meet you at BWI, so let me know when you want to go.
Okay.
Awesome. Well, you guys stop by my house.
As Michael and I know, we're a part of a team now that's going to be working in Baltimore, so that may be more real than you might think, Vic.
I'm game.
Cool. Look forward to it.
And this is a little bit off topic, but I just wonder if you guys know, what year was it that they started pharmaceuticals started advertising direct to consumers? And do you have some sense of the impact of that? Because I certainly can imagine.
Well, I can't tell you the exact number, but I can tell you the first pharmaceutical company to figure it out, which was Schering-Plough. And they had an asthma drug, name escapes me right now, but it's a well-known drug. They even made fun of it on The Simpsons. Claritin.
Right.
It turned out had essentially no benefit over anything else, but they were the first people to do DTCA on a large scale, and the drug for a while in many health plans was the #1 prescribed drug. And where Schering-Plough ran into trouble, they ran into a lot of trouble for a lot of reasons, well deserved, but one of the things they ran into trouble for was they were telling consumers in their ads how safe this drug was. And they had this little the butterfly was somebody else. Oh, they had these two people like cavorting in this meadow or something.
Yes.
Safe the drug is. And then the FDA wants to take it off prescription, make it OTC, which of course means consumers have to pay for it, which of course means the price has to come way down. And they were fighting that one tooth and nail because they were going to lose a lot of their profit. So they basically wanted it both ways.
Yeah, and I think what bothers me the most about DTC advertising is that it has become a way for the pharmaceutical industry to propel this overdiagnosis and overtreatment machine through absurdities like advertising about restless leg syndrome and other deeply dangerous, troubling, costly, undiagnosed diseases, and it's just absurd. Now, I understand they have products that they want to make money on, but they're not helping anybody when they gin stuff up that really is quite immaterial to the overall picture of the country's health problems, and try and get people to go running to their doctor to get a prescription for restless leg syndrome.
Kelly, how are your legs?
They're good. They're asleep a little bit, but I don't think I need a drug. I think they'll be okay.
Kelly, I think that's a different syndrome.
It's an uncomfortable seating position syndrome.
Yes.
I've got a question from our friend Janet. Hello, Janet. And related to
Hey.
modeling, have you looked at the success or lack thereof of health wellness providers' own internal health and wellness program? Are they even close to practicing what they preach?
That's
You
a
know,
great question.
it is a great question, and it also gives us an excuse to pitch the book to people who haven't read it, because in fact, chapter 8, we looked all over for examples of companies that had really good wellness programs, and we were sending out emails all over LinkedIn, except to wellness as a business strategy, where of course we're blocked, so we couldn't send it there. But we got a lot of emails back that said, tell us when you find one of these programs. And then we got a lot of emails from vendors that said, well, let me tell you what we're going to do. And I would always write back to those vendors and say, and quote Henry Ford, and say, you can't build a reputation on what you're going to do. Okay. Now, having said that, the vendor, it's Healthways, which gets a very nice write-up in the book in chapter 8, and I've been there on multiple occasions, and it's well deserved. I mean, the food is just off the charts good and healthy at the same time. And there are people, you exercise when you're there. They've got a garden, where they can't remotely feed the company from it, but they actually use vegetables and herbs from their own garden. It's just a complete, I mean, it's exactly what you'd like to see. I wish they gave tours, because if you see this, I'm exaggerating a little. It would almost bring you to tears to think that, wow, this is actually doable, and not at a insanely profitable company like Google, but at a company that's in a very competitive industry.
Yeah, and Al and I were recently together in January and gave a speech in Silicon Valley at a tech company. We don't know anything about their financials, but as we were walking into the venue, we walked right past the company basketball court, which was a full-size basketball court, and ended up walking into the building we needed to go to, walking through their cafeteria, which is like what Al described about Healthways. Beautifully designed, the kind of place you want to sit and linger over lunch. Massive salad bar, skilled chef behind the range there cooking for people, and that to me is a health status, morale, employee well-being play. And by the time we were done with our talk and we left, the basketball court was full and people were playing. It was roughly lunchtime that day.
Yeah, and I'll add one more example, which is Comcast, which has this amazing cafeteria at the top of Philadelphia. And the productivity enhancement isn't just that they have these great food options, some of which are unhealthy, some of which are healthy, but that by doing that, you make employees so excited about staying on campus for lunch that they don't take the elevator down 50 floors and then walk out into the streets of Philadelphia and spend an hour. They eat at this great place, and then they get right back to work.
Nice. Well, one of my questions was going to be, what are some companies that are doing it right? And it sounds like, well, first of all, I'm hungry. But second of all, I really want to go to Healthways. I want to see that place.
Oh, you got to
Sounds
see it. I'm
sounds
surprised they
great.
don't give public tours. I guess it would be too disruptive. But it's in a different a different magnitude from other sort of non-humongously profitable companies. I mean, they make good money, but it's not like Google, where they just got more money than they know what to do with.
Wow, that is so encouraging. We are about out of time, and I think we probably could have continued asking questions, but let's make sure, Kelly, to get the rest of the questions off to you guys so you can follow up with people
Sure.
individually.
Yep.
A couple things. If you haven't joined the book club, please join the book club. Next month is Heart-Centered Leadership by Dr. Joel Bennett, a lovely book. And I'm just scrolling, and I'm going to stop on somebody's name here, and it is Mary Kay Oler. Mary Kay Oler. You're going to get the Heart Centered Leadership book in the mail shortly. So if you could send me an email with your mailing address in it, just to michaela@hpcareer.net, we will get that book to you, and you will be so all set for next month. But if you haven't read their book, you really do need to do it. You can't refute what you haven't read. So please do read it. It's on Amazon, and is it still Kindle only at this point?
Yeah, it's still an ebook.
For another month.
Okay.
Yeah.
So another month. If you don't have a Kindle, if you have an iPad, you can download the app, or an iPhone,
Right.
whatever. So you've got options for sure. And you guys have any idea what's coming next for you? And I say for you, what I really mean is for us.
This is going to be a tough act to follow, and I don't know, Vic. We'll have to see what happens. We may very well end up in the business of trying to prevent overutilization.
Well,
Right.
let us know, and if you find yourself in jail, call Kelly.
Kelly, the bail bondswoman.
Yeah, you know. I like
Well,
to
thank
delegate.
you.
Thank
Thanks
you.
to everyone who's
Thank you very much. We
actually
appreciate
stayed
it.
on the line. Most people stayed, so thank
Yep.
you for that. And thank you, of course, to Michael and Kelly for putting
Yes.
this all together.
Very much.
Well, you're welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys, for being our test case. I would say it went well. Take
Very
care.
good.
It did.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye, everybody.